President Trump is just hours away from naming his nominee to fill the Supreme Court seat left vacant when Justice Anthony Kennedy officially retires on July 31st. The president will make that announcement tonight at 9 o'clock in a televised address you can watch right here on CBS. I had the chance to sit down with Senior Deputy Whip Congressman Dennis Ross of Lakeland, whose name will not be on a ballot on Tuesday for the first time in almost a decade after he announced his retirement. Here's the congressman who's a member of the leadership on who he thinks will win on Tuesday. Take a listen. That's right, Mike. This is the building that has stirred up so much controversy over the past few days since President Trump mentioned it at his Mar-a-Lago estate. Apparently, this fairly innocuous building has been the center of missile production here in the Bay Area for the last 25 years. We want to make the most of the time you have with us this morning, so let's get you in the know, and let's do it right now. Today is Election Day in the city of Tampa. Polls open at 7 o'clock this morning, exactly 1 hour from right now. If you live in Tampa, you're choosing between these 7 candidates right here. Now, in order for a winner to be declared at 7 o'clock tonight, one candidate has to get more than 50% of the vote, which might be a challenge. Experts say it probably will not happen because so many candidates are running, meaning we will have a runoff election. That would happen in April. Now, this is a live picture of the precinct on Davis Islands, where outgoing Mayor Bob Buckhorn is expected to vote a little bit later this morning. He's wrapping up his second term. He has termed out, meaning he cannot run again. There are also 18 amendments that you will find on the ballot this year. We've got them all posted and who's running for city council on our website. Right now, it's WTSP.com/EyeOnPolitics, so check it out. Meantime, happening up in Tallahassee today, Governor Ron DeSantis will deliver his very first State of the State address. That's going to happen at 11 o'clock this morning. We're going to be streaming that on our 10 News Facebook page. There were a lot of big Republican wins on Tuesday, especially here in the state of Florida. So what happened to this blue wave that we were supposed to get? We start with the Manatee County School Board delaying the plan to arm teachers until next year. The board met last night and couldn't reach an agreement, so they tabled the topic until April 23rd. The district already has armed guardians right now who patrol schools with no law enforcement authority. The governor's removal of a Broward County sheriff is heading to the state's high court now. Governor Ron DeSantis suspended Sheriff Scott Israel earlier this year for his department's handling of the Stoneman Douglas shooting, saying Israel failed to keep children safe. But a lawsuit says the governor wasn't right in suspending him. That's now headed to the Supreme Court. And in Tallahassee, the House passed the felon voting rights bill this week with a few tweaks. It says felons have to finish their sentences and pay any fines and fees before their voting rights can be restored. But ex-felon advocates say court costs and fees should not be a part of the new bill. And if you want cheaper prescriptions, you might be calling Canada in the very near future here in Florida. Governor Ron DeSantis is pushing for a bill that allows Floridians to buy cheaper drugs through Canada's import program. That bill will head to the House today. If approved, we could see cheaper prescriptions within the next couple of years. We'll let you know what happens there. And caught on camera, check this out. If you're not looking at your screens, please do now. This just absolutely brazen in broad daylight. Tampa police want to find these two women right here who are robbing houses. So a United States congressman is staying at an Airbnb.
I love Airbnb.
Oh, it's fantastic, but not what you would expect, I think. So is that a result of the cost of living, or is that because, I mean, because there's no government housing. Is that something that still exists?
It is. It is. Now, there are about 100 members, as far as I've been told, that still sleep, in their offices, because the cost of living is so extreme.
It's almost 25%.
Yeah, it's unreal.
That was a hushed rumor that kind of made its way around the Capitol. Yes. It wasn't mainstream news. No. It was very quiet. And all of a sudden, Paul Ryan was Speaker of the House.
Correct.
But the same issue is now maybe more relevant 2 years later because of Me Too.
Absolutely.
So could it prevent him? And right now, we're not totally sure what the result will be, but it looks like Rick Scott has beat Bill Nelson. They're separated by less than 0.5% of the vote here in the state of Florida, which could trigger a possible recount. We'll learn more about that today, but what are you hearing? And could a recount potentially change the result? October has been a historically tough month on the stock market. The crash in 29 happened in October. The crash in 87 happened in October. And the Dow lost almost 17 percentage points in October 2008. And that started the most recent financial crisis, Baker. So what is going on here? Several sources, including NBC News. CBS News has not confirmed it just yet, but it's still very, very early. And I did a FinnertyFiles about this whole special election yesterday here on Brightside. But Connor Lamb, the Democrat, has claimed victory, and several sources are confirming that victory. There were 579 votes separating the two candidates, and right now it looks like the Democrat is the big winner in a very, very red county in western Pennsylvania. Yeah, several names on the list. Interesting to note that all of this happening less than 24 hours since the polls closed on Tuesday in the midterm election. So we'll keep an eye on who the president names. And now the Democrats have taken control of the House of Representatives. It's time to start looking at who's going to be the next Speaker of the House. Paul Ryan is out in January, and most signs point toward House Minority Leader and former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi retaking control, but that is no guarantee, and there are a couple reasons why. The first issue is Nancy Pelosi's age. She is 78 years old right now. In fact, all of the Democratic leadership right now is over 75. Assistant Minority Leader James Clyburn is 78 as well. And Steny Hoyer, the Minority Whip, is 79 going on 80, which is a far cry from some of the new blood the Democratic Party elected on Tuesday. And the second big issue right now, Pelosi isn't that popular in her own party. According to Politico, at least 20 House Democrats vowed to vote against Pelosi for Speaker if the Democrats retook the House. So we'll have to wait and see if a challenger does emerge to take back the gavel over the next several days. Check out this right here. A woman suffering from depression was trying to commit suicide by jumping off a bridge. And "Don't do it" were the first words out of Officer Justin Henry's mouth when he and his partner pulled up on this scene right here. The woman warned the officers that she was just about to jump, and the officers tried to take her down. They slowly kind of positioned themselves, you can see here, closer to that woman. They closed in, and eventually they were able to pull her to safety. The tension between President Trump and Attorney General Jeff Sessions continues to grow, seemingly. Sessions is firing back against the president, saying in a statement, quote, "I took control of the Department of Justice the day I was sworn in," unquote, and the DOJ will not be improperly influenced by political considerations. His words come in response to this interview on Fox News. Take a look. Now the Democrats have taken control of the House of Representatives. It's time to start looking at who's going to be the next Speaker of the House. Joe Biden, 2020. Now, we heard from Biden over the weekend for the first time in a long time. The former vice president saying he's yet to close the door on a possible run for the Oval Office in 2020. And apparently many Democrats feel that his kind of irreverent Biden style gives him the best chance against President Trump in 3 short years. Check this out. If you're not taking a look at your screens, please do. We're able to take this out of the archive here. This is a voting booth right here from the 2000 presidential elections. One of our photographers was able to get her hands on this, I believe, at auction, or they were giving it away. You didn't have to pay for it, Deb, though, right? Nope, she was able to get this, and it's fascinating. If the camera can zoom in, you can see right here, I don't know how clearly you can see it, but I can see it, black and white right there, George Bush, Al Gore. That's the election that started it all 18 years ago. The 2000 presidential election, of course, ended in a Supreme Court vote 5-4 in favor of George Bush. Last day of July, first day of the rest of our lives. President Trump's going to be in town today. We've got a very busy broadcast for you, but first we want to get to Baker Machado. He is live from the floor of the New York Stock Exchange this morning. Baker, what's going on? Hey, Baker, quick question. You think we'll see a trillionaire in our lifetimes?
Oh, that's a great question. Yes, and who do you think it's going to be? Mark Zuckerberg?
Maybe the Zuck. We got to get him in. We have a
no.
daily quota with Zuckerberg here on Cheddar, so maybe Zuckerberg.
That's true.
He's got the bet. Maybe Jeff Bezos.
What kind of evidence?
Baker, before we get rolling here, I got a question. There's a little bit of a controversy happening right now in the 10 News newsroom. Are you 6'3"?
I like that is the controversy that's happening in the newsroom. When I stand up straight, yes, I am. I am about 6'3", which is insane. I'm about all leg and this much torso.
The desk, I don't know what your position in there. I thought you were 5'4" and a half. Yep. That's not funny. They moved the camera so I look shorter now. Oh, man. That's all right. All right, Baker. We'll see you next time.
Yes.
Both Presidents Bush and Presidents Obama tried to codify this. They tried to stop this by reauthorizing something called the Wilberforce Trafficking Protection Act. They did so in 2003 under Bush. President Obama did so in 2008. Although temporary and inelegant immigrants are now, 2018, being released with ankle monitors. That way we know where they are and we can make sure they come back for their court dates before an immigration court. Look, the bottom line, our country has a long history of putting a Band-Aid on a gaping wound. It's going to be up to Congress to finally pass a law that makes some sort of sense. But all we're doing now is causing new problems that we then have to solve again. And a lot of you have been talking about his suspension on WTSP.com/YourSay Tampa Bay this morning. The question we're asking, do you think the suspension was too light or too harsh? And right now, the majority of people are saying 3 games is just too light. You can keep voting right now. Again, it's WTSP.com/YourSayTampa Bay. We have been getting a lot of votes on that, as you can imagine, since we posted that story this morning. So keep those votes coming. In 2020, Joe Kennedy will only be 40 years old. Compare that to the other Democratic frontrunners right now. Elizabeth Warren, she'll be 70. Joe Biden will be 77. And Bernie Sanders will be 78 years old in 2020. But for anyone who thinks that 40 might be a little bit too young, check out French President Emmanuel Macron. He is 40 years old. Justin Trudeau was just 45 when he took over as Prime Minister of Canada, and Joe's grandfather, Robert Kennedy, who was killed 50 years ago tomorrow, was only 42 years old when his life was cut short in 1968. But is he really serious about running? Well, I say yes, because this is typically what happens in the build-up to a campaign. Little leaks, little articles start coming out. I want to know, though, would you vote for a 40-year-old? They took things like private documents and recordings of phone calls that he had with the President of the United States before he was president. This is a really big deal, and I wanted to kind of explain why this all matters. I'm sure you've heard the term the attorney-client privilege before, which is basically communication between an attorney-client that is private and protected. But it turns out there are exceptions. I found something kind of interesting. It was only front page news for a day because it happened on July 18th, 1969. So it was at night. We had a one-day news cycle. A day later, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin landed on the moon, and that bumped it from the front page of the news. The Trump campaign paid them $5.9 million just before the 2016 election for Facebook users' private information. Now, they were able to get the information off 50 million separate accounts. There are 200 million people, including myself, that use Facebook in the U.S. That means 1 in 4 people were affected by this. This is a zoomed-in view of that area. This is the emergency shutoff lever right here, and this is the collective controls right here. This controls your pitch and your fuel, and this is the lever that somebody may have gotten a strap or something lodged on. If you push them down, they're already locked in place. But if a strap pulls it up, you're in big trouble really fast. And that makes you wonder what was going on up there that caused someone's bag or a strap or something to get wrapped around one of these. Right, Courtney, the funny thing is I woke up this morning, maybe funny is the wrong word choice there, but more questions
than answers,
and
right?
fewer answers. He passed the check. He bought things legally. We know some things about this guy now, the shooter. And why say his name? Who cares?
I know,
right?
That's right.
But we don't know a lot about why he actually did this. I posted a question on Facebook yesterday. What's the biggest question you have about Las Vegas? And the question everybody is asking is about motives. But do you realize that last week's lead story was centered around an ex-NFL quarterback in Colin Kaepernick who once wore pig socks mocking the police on an NFL sideline? A week later, we're all praising the police across the city of Las Vegas for their quick actions on Sunday that probably ended up saving lives. Division and empathy, that is our new national norm. Believe it or not, Space Force, something like this has actually happened before. 1983, President Reagan introduces a program called the Strategic Defense Initiative. Now, that name didn't last very long. His critics soon dubbed that Star Wars, basically before his press conference introducing it was over. The plan was literally to build an American satellite that could shoot down Soviet missiles in outer space when they were launched before they hit America. That plan was doomed from the start for numerous reasons. But back to Space Force for just a second. Believe it or not, NASA actually likes the plan. According to Space.com, Space Force could play a huge role in defending Earth from asteroids. And on June 20th, just last Wednesday, NASA released something they're calling the National Near-Earth Object Action Plan. The report said that in the next 10 years, the U.S. needs to protect Earth from any potential asteroid impacts. This came from NASA, folks. So I ask you this morning, have you ever seen the movie Armageddon? Well, under Space Force, Bruce Willis and Ben Affleck would be real characters, and they would be enlisted in the U.S. Space Force. So here's where we are right now. You can't enlist in Space Force yet, but unlike President Reagan's Star Wars, Space Force could become a real thing.